at delivering, when we look at the way we have to deliver the pedagogy, I suppose we will have to take a personal stance. And that's where I would like to stress upon how we can look at flexible strategies for continuous development of competencies that would deliver high impact and value added talent, that is our students. The competency-based education, as I said in the beginning, has come as a great ray of hope, which is a part of the National Education Policy 2020. This CBA method, for those of us who may not be aware, I'm sure as teachers we are, but then there are other non-teaching participants in the group. I would request you to go through the competency-based education method that is being propagated by the Ministry of Education and Human Resources Development. How we can bring in a change at the grassroots level itself. And while the students are being prepared through the competency-based education there, we at the higher learning centers can just have to carry that forward, redesigning our own pedagogy. Okay, so it's if we develop this culture, this ecosystem of having competency-based learning, then in a way we could meet the challenges and face the demon, as we could call it, in a better manner. So I have divided my presentation into 4 or 5 parts. Part 1 is defining talent. Now, Malcolm Timothy Gladwell, the famous motivational speaker and an author, in his wonderful book, The Outliers, he gives a very powerful definition of talent. He says talent is the desire to practice. It is not something that you're gifted. It is there somewhere within you, but unless you harness it, unless you nurture it, perhaps you may not be able to use that talent. So he says talent is the desire to practice because you believe it is in you and you would want to hone it, you would want to upgrade it. So from natural talents, one can develop competencies and skills. Therefore, talent is a strong desire to do something and a strong will to persevere in the effort related to it. You know, the classic example of the 2 cricket players we've had, Sachin Tendulkar and Vinod Kambli, the famous Harsha Bhogle, made it so popular in his talk in the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. He said, see, talent is useless unless it is harnessed and unless it is manifested in a particular way. And here is a classic example of these 2 players, schoolmates who made records in the 10th standard. But if you look at their journeys of cricketing, in the cricketing field, why did Sachin Tendulkar end up as the god of cricket while Vinod Kambli, after 7 or 8 years, just fizzled away? He reasons out, and I totally agree with him, that whatever talent both possessed, and Vinod Kambli did have an edge at that time when they were students, Sachin Tendulkar practiced it, harnessed it, developed an attitude of a world-class cricketer, managed his emotions well, understood his weaknesses, managed his followership, his fans, everything, while Vinod Kambli got carried away. He could not manage his talent well and he fizzled out. So it's a very sad story, but then there is a lot to learn from it. So somewhere we have within us an ability. We will have to make it an attribute so that we can contribute towards our professional growth. We can also contribute to the field that we are engaged in. So talent is a very general or a generic term in a common parlance. Sometimes it is, used in a noun form. So he is a talent, she is a talent. So for example, Michael Jordan, who is a basketball player, or an A.R. Rahman, without much training in the traditional sense, they were all known as talents. But then what made them so great is because they harnessed it, they practiced it. So talent is the intrinsic and natural need of a person. Every person wants to, or in the current scenario, has to develop his natural talents. In the academic context, there was a great field that was developed called talent management, which was the contribution of the human resources and organizational psychology stream. And whatever was talent was considered as an asset for an organization so that they could fulfill their goals and also progress towards good growth. Let's go further. There are certain other perspectives to talent. As I said, everybody has talent, but not everybody has talent required for a specific job or a function. Now, I am a professor at the humanities department, and I need to harness, grow, get the knowledge of the skills, find out what is the latest within my area of learning so that I can influence my students. However, I may not be able to do the same in the Department of Mathematics because I do not have a talent for that. I may not match the best professor there, but whatever department I am in, I will try to be my best. So therefore, each one of us has talent, but not all of us has talent to fit into every stream. We should recognize that first, and this is where the competency recognition comes in. So talent proceeds from the drives of the people. See, I have to have the attitude of growing. I'll have to have the attitude of learning. And that is the drive that I possess within me. Otherwise, there will be plenty of Vinod Kamblis where you don't have a drive. So this originates from the person's personality. When I have the drive, I recognize the talent or whatever experience, education, and environment that I have grown in, which has made me a person today. I will have to push it forward. I will have to have an access to learning so that I become the best, or I become an asset, as a talent would be called. I become an asset. A person is sometimes, getting he gets the good recognition, or he becomes recognized as an industry leader or a talent because he demonstrates that kind of behavior. So currently what we are embroiled in is we believe that our education, which is our degree certificates, would fetch us the right kind of recognition. Of course, it's a necessity, but unless and until we demonstrate that kind of skill that the talent should possess, we demonstrate that kind of result or that kind of behavior, I don't think we should be looking for recognition or progress because we are not adequately prepared. We have our education, we have our experience, but that we don't have our skill sets. The same thing will happen to our own students if you do not engage them in the development of their skills. We impart knowledge, we impart content. But today, if you notice, and especially post-pandemic, content was available everywhere. I have two children who are, one is a student, one is working. The student son that I have, along with listening to the online classes, if he needed more content, especially in the area which he was interested in, he never went to any textbook. He never ever called anybody. He knew he could search for it, isn't it? So content is available aplenty. So as teachers, we are not just imparting content, but we will have to recognize what are the competencies related to that content and how our students could progress further with the application through competencies of that particular stream. So a person is sometimes identified by his talent. From those natural talents, you can develop your competencies and skills. So I use the word aptitude out here. The other day there was a student who was asking me, ma'am, I joined engineering, but then I would have been better off maybe as a chartered accountant. I said, please take an aptitude test. You're not late. You're just in the first year. If in case your aptitude, which is hidden within you, shows that skill set or a competency that your natural talent has for the area of accounting or for the area of commerce, please go ahead. Otherwise, you will also be able to find out through that aptitude test where you can fit in. So the word aptitude is somewhere underestimated. We have a bit of the herd mentality also, and we just rush in where everybody rushes in, or in a kind of a blind perception that particular fields can get us jobs. We may fetch the first job, but then how good is it to build a career is what we will have to think about. So therefore, an aptitude is what talent is. And that aptitude, if it is nurtured through competencies, can we deliver a better student or make him ready for a particular market. Now, this is coming to the part 2 of my presentation, which is defining competency or competence. Now, these are two separate words academically. Now, competency is the ability to do something efficiently. Okay, so the word competent comes from there. So if X, Y, Z are competent people, that's because they possess a particular competency and they do a job well. But when I say competence, it is a set of characteristics and skills that enable to improve an already existing area of knowledge or innovate another area of knowledge or another a tool. Okay, so it's the efficiency in a performance of a job, or it can also be used to better that particular job. It's interesting to note out here that the term competence first appeared in an article authored by R.W. White in 1959 as a performance motivation in an industry, in a cotton and manufacturing industry. So he just used that in the personal management stream as a part of the feedback and as a part of the bonus and other things that were being distributed. And he said anybody who shows that spark of competence perhaps will be a recognized worker. From then on, thanks to the basics laid down by him, researchers, academicians, industrialists who were interested in developing the field of HR and personal management, they came about with a competency-based system that supports all things related to three key areas, which is knowledge, skills, and attributes or job behaviors, as we call it. For example, my master's in English is my knowledge because I have studied it, it's my education. My communication skills will enable me to have a competency or an edge over somebody who may not have that kind of communication skills as a teacher. But then what are the job related behaviors for a teacher? I must possess something called empathy, listening ability, ability to understand things from the student's perspective, a learner all the way, etc., etc. So at this juncture, I would request my participants to note a particular book by our own author called Seema Sangu, Competency-Based Management. It's a nice handbook of competency management, and she has listed many features, many characteristics related to different jobs, and you will get an idea as to how you can develop yourself based on that particular reference book. Of course, that's just the beginning. There is a lot of different paths that you can take, but for the beginning, I think Dr. Seema Sangi, handbook on competency management is a good one to read for everybody who wants to be a good professional. So incorporating these competencies in learning and pedagogy is the method of teaching delivery, nurtures an ecosystem or an ecosystem of applied knowledge. I'm using the word applied knowledge here because knowledge content is built, but if it is not applied in the market, perhaps this competitiveness is not going to be there. The global advantage is not going to be there. So suppose we have an electrical engineering student and he's not able to apply whatever he has learned in his classrooms, in the labs, say in a car manufacturing company, an electrical car manufacturing company, despite training, despite dealing with his competency development, then perhaps he lacks the application skills. Because right from the beginning, from his first year to the final year, he may not have been used to the concept. So he's cramming information. He's just passing his exams. The assessments are also devised in such a fashion, maybe. And he's used to being a rote learner. And then to get away from that system and start the applications, it becomes a little more challenging for him. It's not impossible though, but his peers who are able to do that would have moved ahead. And that's not very encouraging, and it could frustrate the person. And I'm sure most of you will agree with me that worldwide, this is what is being discussed. how we can skill our engineers, our teachers, our kindergarten preparatory teachers, the doctors even, although it's such an applied field, even doctors have to learn a few skills related to behavior, related to other sets of soft skills, as we call. So currently, doctors are also trained in the area of communication, they are trained in the area of empathy, they are trained in the area of bedside manners, etiquettes, because those are all very, very proficiently used in their field. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. So what are the competencies in a job? Now, I have covered a little bit of this slide in my talk when I was dealing with the previous one. Nevertheless, there are certain highlighted features that I want you to concentrate upon. As I mentioned, the knowledge, skills, abilities, and personal characteristics, the KSA, as we call it, make up the competencies. So work-related or employability factors which help in superior performance is what the competencies in a job are. And when you have to identify or define the essential functions of the job, you will have to bear in mind what the competencies and the skill sets and the knowledge are required for that particular job. Okay, so skill and knowledge is the easiest because we already have a base. Somebody else is also creating it. Thanks to researchers and academicians like us, we are creating a knowledge base. But then the skilling has to come from industry, or it has to come from field studies, maybe on-job training, assessment centers. Okay, so this is where we develop the skills and attributes that will come from the psychologists and also aptitude experts. So the attitude, ability, and the cognitive traits, which is something that is inbuilt within us, the thinking ability, the logical, analytical ability, these are all the cognitive traits that are attributed to competencies. Now, what are the differences between skills, competence, and talent? Sometimes they are interchangeably used. Indeed, they are complementary, but then there is a slight difference, a hairline difference between skills, competencies, and talent. Now, if you look at the list, here is what I have listed, just to be short and also succinct. Some definitions of skills could be abilities that make you perform well, abilities that you require, you'll acquire, through training. For example, when I was a student of literature, I knew English language. I also knew who are the authors, but thanks to my wonderful teachers, they allowed me to harness my ability about references. So suppose I was studying Shakespeare, they would tell me how I can use that particular language in an essay or in delivering a lecture or in using it in a debate. So I learned that thanks to my teachers. So I have acquired the communication skill, not just the language of it, but how I can refine it and use it in a professional context. Now, there is also something which is a skill which is inbuilt in you. And this is a fantastic example I always used to give my students in the last 2 years since I'm here in an engineering college. The mechanic on the road sometimes possesses the same skill and ability as a mechanical engineer. That's because he has harnessed it. He has recognized it. He has learned it from the time of from his childhood, maybe observing from the surroundings. So he may not have a professional, formal degree, but he possesses that skill. And sometimes, there are examples we read about college dropouts, about people who didn't believe in the formal structure of engineering or literature or law, etc. There are some areas like law where you have to have a degree, but then or medicine for that matter as well. But when it comes to the applied areas such as arts, you require an inbuilt, innate ability. So something that you're good at becomes a talent. This is an example I've just given. Somebody who's a singer, for that matter, without much training, the natural ability is there. Polish the person up and he's going to be a world-class performer. So the ability to find a solution is also a skill. we somewhere do not recognize that as much because it's a soft skill. So the ability to find solutions, these are all some things that we can list out as skill sets. Now, there is a small distinction here again in the skills. It's the hard and the soft skills. Soft skills are personal. They are related to our emotional, social, and intellectual abilities like communication, empathy, etiquettes, behavioral attributes, etc. Hard skills are functional or technical competencies that can be derived from our training and from our education. Programming, C language, for example, repairs that are maybe that are applied in maybe space research. All these are technical competencies. However, your hard skills are not very effective if you do not frill it up with your soft skills. So I may be a world-class engineer, but then if I'm not a team player, or if I'm not a person who respects others, or who does not empathize with the situation, who does not know what my application in the field of science could do to another, then perhaps he's not a successful resource person, because your soft skills sometimes enable you to work better. So soft skills are definitely complementary to the hard skills. Now, competencies again are of two types. Some are one of it is the threshold, which is the beginning, at the onset of your job, your beginning of a particular career. What are all those skills that you require? And then there are differential skills, and this is the differentiator. As they say, there are two students with a CGPA of 9 or 10, but then the person who has differential competencies will progress further because he has acquired another list of skill sets, which maybe his peer who has the same CGPA has not acquired. So many academicians have mentioned 5 types of competency features, such as motives, traits, self-concept, knowledge, and skills. While some of them are visible, for example, the knowledge that you possess, the hands-on skilling that you have, maybe to build something or to design something or to make a machine, all these are visible. But some of the personality traits that we somewhere ignore are those invisible features that do come up whenever there are people working in an organization. So let us introduce ourselves to this iceberg metaphor. It's one of my favorites because understanding our competencies is easier through the visible and the invisible examples. Now, what is on the water surface? That is your visible, your knowledge, capacities, the standards that you set for yourself, etc. But there is something deep within you, within your intellectual and emotional ability, that is not seen to the naked eye. The other person is not aware of what you possess within. So if you look at our own Oriental philosophy, we've always been promoting and encouraging the concept of the Atman, which is looking within, right? So if you look within and find out the other qualities that you possess, it will definitely help your visible characteristics, your visible traits. So this iceberg is something that we all are. Whatever we are exhibiting or whatever we are showing is very, very, maybe 10 or 20% less visible to the others. But what we possess within is what we will have to develop and explore. Now, the observable behavior, that is the tip of the iceberg, arises from the dynamics of the natural behavior. You can find out, isn't it? The communication skills the person possesses, the way he deals with students, the deals with employees in an organization. These are all visible features. But then once he is into some kind of white paper writing or research or innovation, then all his other behavior comes on to the forefront. So therefore, the observable behavior arises from the dynamics of the natural behavior of a person and the desired behavior, what he wants to be. As children, we were all asked, what is your ambition? What is your aim? Little did we know that further on in our life, aim and ambition is something which is hidden within us that is called as a professional desire. So that we have to determine how we are going to go about it, acquiring those skill sets that will get us to that particular desired behavior. So education, training and development, learning and development, assessments, continuous learning, improvements, these are all the things that will come to our rescue. Now, coming back to our connection with talent, skills, and competencies, as I have mentioned earlier, talent is an aptitude, and he can acquire behavior through knowledge and experience. You can change the person's attitude through training and development, provided the person is internally motivated. And this is where talent comes in. Okay, so competency profiles are made to clarify about a function or a role. So when I have talent, it is within. When I draw a list of competencies, it is for the talent to recognize whether he possesses it or he does not possess it. It is for me to realize whether I possess that particular area of skill or do I have to learn it so that I can tap my talent and demonstrate it properly. So an example I have quoted here is in IT. Programming is an important hard skill that we will learn from our domain knowledge. To write a good computer program, the programmer needs to have good analytical qualities and make sure the program meets quality requirements, which is his skill set. Competencies now come in to develop that skill, which is problem analysis, attention to detail, focus on quality. So these are all underlying factors or underlying characteristics that we will have to develop, and then we will be better programmers. So examples of now behavior that define what is the competency for problem analysis or identification of a certain gap is the person is highly interested in detail. He quickly sees causes. Why is that? There is this word called mercurial. Oh, the person's acumen towards recognizing what is the gap is fantastic, which is your cognitive ability, the use of the left and the right brain, etc. So, I have chosen this topic not just to discuss the industry requirements of competencies, job skill sets, etc., but to focus on some of the cognitive traits that we have somewhere not recognized, maybe as academicians or as industry leaders. There is a white paper that says that the 21st century research in the field of humanities, social sciences, management, etc., will be predominantly cognitive sciences because artificial intelligence is coming up in a big way. Robotics is coming up. So how else can we produce world-class robotics from the country unless we have studied cognitive sciences, application of cognitive sciences in our engineering streams? Okay, so now we come to part 3, which is how do you synergize between talent and competency? See, we are nurturing leaders of, students or youngsters of today to make them world-class leaders of the future. The country is in their hands and our hands as well, as elders, as teachers, as facilitators. So let's see how we can bring in this synergy and find out a practical solution of nurturing competency-based talent. So someone who has certain talent will not automatically show his behavior or his associated competencies. It is the potential that he has within that we will have to recognize. How? We will come to a little later. So from that talent, people develop their personal preferred behavior. I have given you an example of a teacher, the behavioral attributes that I have to possess as a teacher to make my class a little more effective and interesting and hold the students' attention, not just to understand the content that I am delivering, but also make them think further. So I will have to definitely harness, prepare, work hard, be in touch or sync with the latest that is happening in my field, and also know some kind of collaborative learning, because I can't do everything possible in one particular stream. Which brings me to the area of I don't mind cooperating with another because I know I have that gap. I don't mind collaborating with somebody who is an expert, seeking help and guidance. Although I am 50 plus, I should be aware of the fact that I am in a mutual collaborating ecosystem. So this is something that we will have to prefer as a behavior. So if you know what someone's talent is, you can also predict the potential, whether the person delivers the potential is left to him, right? And that's also an attitude. So knowledge skills the person may master, but the other attributes, which is attitude, cognitive traits, personal behavior, that is a very dicey thing. So let's see how we can do that. Education, for example, has a great role to play here because we create that system for learners. And then climate change in terms of the educational culture, okay, addressing certain areas that are required for not just today, but how we can predict the same for the future. So rather than being educators, today we are facilitators because our students possess certain kind of information and an advantage by virtue of the information highway, and we can collaborate with them in not just imparting the content, but in trying to help list out those skills and list out those competencies. So one good example that I can think of now is rather than just having classrooms, we should try and create assessment centers within our own classrooms. Not just assessing students. Of course, there are challenges. We have 70 to 80 in a class, sometimes exceeding more than that. Nevertheless, we can just draw out a particular sense of assessment, not just when it comes to their examinations or academic curriculum, but also what are the skill sets and competencies. Maybe a 10-minute or a 15-minute activity after the session is over of that particular subject within that 55 minutes or 1 hour, maybe thrice a week or twice a week. So suppose it's a 2-credit course, you could make it once a week so that our curriculum is not neglected. I'm trying to advocate this, and with a lot of supported by other seniors, that this can be done in our own colleges. And of course, even our own college management systems, the climate that we are creating in our educational system can have an assessment center. See, I'm not saying that there are institutions that do not have it. Of course, there are institutions within our own state, country that possess it. But we are looking at a demographic dividend of India. We're looking at the country as a whole. We are looking at inclusive growth. So if this has to reach every nook and corner, I think we will have to advocate it in a big way. How we can create an assessment center within our own classrooms. And the placement cell, how they can be having an access to every stream, maybe after maybe the 4th or the 5th semester, how they can collaborate with us. Initially, they can provide us with a list, and later on, how they can collaborate with us as the teaching and the academicians in harnessing that particular competency within our own classroom. Now, part 4A, which brings me to the 4th part, after I have told you about what talent is, what competencies are, what are the skill sets, how we can develop this synergy, let us look at how we have to collaborate with industry, who are using our students, who are using our youth. Our youth are also getting into innovation, they're getting into engineering, they're getting into entrepreneurship, although they do not possess professional formal degrees. Now, academia especially need to be aware of the industry needs, generic to the specific competency skill. Competency mapping is something that we all can adapt to in a very fundamental way. Of course, in business drives industry, isn't it? Money drives industry. In academics, we can borrow this very fundamental concept of competency mapping related to our own subject or stream, and this is across all the fields, not just engineering. It can happen at the humanities, it can happen at the law, it can happen at the medicine, it can happen at Ayurveda, it can happen at crafts and councils, etc. This application of competency mapping in a very fundamental way can happen across genres. Okay, so the related subject or stream that can be mapped along with imparting the knowledge and the content. Student must be viewed as a potential resourceful talent, not somebody who scores 100 marks. Of course, it is important. We all are parents, we all are academicians. We do require who possesses that kind of hard work or diligence to grasp the subject or to show that characteristic of hard work, because that is a precursor to his work ethic later. Somebody who's used to working hard, who's used to framing his own timetable, being a better student, will carry those same characteristics and features. What is the problem? Here he has a set content, he has a set knowledge base for which he will have to study, and he's using that to write his exams. Life outside our educational institutions do not possess that particular syllabus. He has to figure it out on his own. So although he's used to working hard, although he's used to working diligently, he may not, or he's lost because there is nothing that somebody can give him. He has to find that on his own. So if we view a student as a resourceful talent, that is somebody whom we need to harness, we will have to bring in some kind of a change in the pedagogy and the attitude in the approach to meet the challenge, which is essential. So here I would bring in the cohesion between talent, competencies within our own areas of learning, and it should be facilitated in such a way that it translates talent into desired competencies. So I find a student, this is maybe in a primary school, who has got a love for numbers. So what do? I engage the set of students in such a way that they begin to take an interest in it, and they are also able to acquire good skills, irrespective of the marks they score. I think by now we have numerous examples of how somebody who was not even a mathematician when he was in his earlier days in school and college has become a world-class statistician or become a world-class mathematician because he found that desire or a drive later on and he tapped his potential then. So therefore, if we create that ecosystem and we look at a student as a potential talent, we can somewhere drive this nurturing. Now, one needs to identify the steps that are needed for this process, and that's where talent management process can be a little beneficial. So this is where theory comes in. The problem with industry is somewhere they debunk theory, they debunk academics, which is not right, because we are providing a platform for them for which they can develop. And those managers that have a good base of theory, that have a good base of academics, understanding of the academics especially, can actually make the processes for training and development very effective. And that is what we have to learn as academicians. Their application orientation, their on the feet thinking, and also the way they deal with talent within their own organizations. So if we bring in a little of this from them and they get a little of this from us, I think that's going to be a good industry institute interface. So if one lists and determines what the most important competencies are, which one is critical or crucial for the stream, the branch or the subject, learning is more attuned towards application. Now, most higher areas of learning are looking at outcome-based education, which is very laudable because there is a set of skills, there is a set of traits that are being addressed out there. Now, that is something which we have, made a good progress in. But along with outcome-based education, along with the course outcomes, we should also look at course skill sets and competencies in the pedagogy. So when we do a competency mapping in collaboration with the outcome-based education, perhaps we will address 80% of these issues because 20% still is the student, his attitude. Okay, so I think 80% of it will be a deliverable if we collaborate the outcome based along with the competency based. So we will have to look at the key areas here, which is core competencies. The competencies a student should be able to show or develop for that particular job or for that particular field. Key competencies, going in a general list, core is what is required most, and key competencies is a list that is required to perform in general. Critical competencies, now these are the differentiators, as I said. Not everybody possesses critical competencies right at the onset, but a good training and development program or a learning and development program will make the student beneficial. And critical competencies are known as the cutting edge, which somebody possesses over another. At this juncture, I would like to share the example of the artificial intelligence and the robotics field. Mr. Mistry, pardon me, I'm currently unable to recall his name, though I use him so often. But if you look at Pranav Mistry, yes, Pranav Mistry, if you look at his YouTube videos, if you look at his area of work, it's more of competencies, it's more of differential critical competencies that he has used in Harvard Business School, and that has made him a celebrated researcher, academician, and also industry consultant. So we look at core competencies and key competencies, no doubt, but the critical competencies, I think once the student is aware that he has to master more, he has to learn more, once he gets into the industry, the attitudinal change would have happened in the student. Otherwise, it's, my package is this, my job is this, 2 years I'm going to stick on there, another year I'm going to stick on here. And they are contributing a lot to attrition rather than their own personal growth. And sometimes what happens is within 3 or 4 years, they get tired out because they are fed up. There is nothing that is propelling them or pushing them. So right at the onset, within our own classrooms, if we can make this distinction of the core, key, and critical competencies, I think we are bringing in a slight attitudinal change also in the student. So competencies is a beautiful amalgamation of employability as well as personal skills. More often we hear this, isn't it? The person had a lot of potential. He got a job in this particular company, but after 5 years or 6 years, he became a recluse. He kind of, his personal life became a mess, or he got into substance abuse. Worse, he's not able to manage his work-life balance. These are all the things that we can harness and nurture within our own classrooms, thanks to the general and the technical competencies. So there is a small request by industry actually to the academicians to have an orientation to the competency mapping process. I told you in the last part where I will be dealing with the empirical experience sharing of 2 students, they have made it predominantly clear that if we start sharing knowledge that is a little away from the subject, related to their own personal behavior, related to their own competencies, then they will be able to deal with life's challenges better. Okay, so the National Association of Colleges and Employers, that is NACE, they have released a fact sheet of 7 core competencies that form career readiness. I won't say career success, but somewhere prepared and ready. First one is the critical thinking, problem solving, and resilience. Now, resilience is something that is a soft skill as well as a hard skill. Thomas Alva Edison, the very famous celebrated scientist, is a good example. Failures never really bothered him. Every time he failed, he got up because he had the ability of a scientist, because he was a critical thinker. He also had the team that could solve his problems, resolve his issues, and he never was afraid to fail. In fact, his famous statement, I know how to fail 999 times, and I just know how to succeed with that one chance, is a famous example. Now, it's rather cliched, but sometimes, when you look at it seriously, it can apply to each one of us. We become critical thinkers. Yes, we have the ability to resolve our issues and problems, but then can we face failures? Can we face setbacks? Is that we're so ashamed of? That is something that we will have to deal with in a new way when it comes to the current generation and us as well. Oral and written communications. I'm afraid I'm not looking at English language. Language is just a tool. Whatever language you speak, whatever language you acquire, you should be able to effectively communicate both orally and in the written manner. That also includes your disposition, your body language, etc. Unfortunately, in our country, we have given too much predominance to English language. Of course, it is important, but if we develop that readiness for oral and written communication skills in whatever language we speak, beginning from the mother tongue, I think that translates into competitiveness in other languages as well. So my mother tongue is Kannada, and I can assure you, I speak Kannada. If not in a very high, nuance of the language, I can speak it effectively in the same tone and in a good manner. So that translates even to some of the other languages I know, because that skill is already acquired by me. The attitude is already there. So I don't put English over everything else. I put all languages on a common plane. I put communicative ability on a higher plane, whatever may be the language, because language is just a tool. Now, teamwork, collaboration, empathy. These are areas that we will have to work on when it comes to our students, when it comes to our children, teenagers especially, because the future is all about collaborating with one another and understanding things from the other's perspective. Information technology application, science and technology, information areas, that is whatever we are doing currently, engaging ourselves in a discussion via technology should become a wake-up call across the nook and corner. We sit in a place like a Bangalore or a Belgaum, which are a little bit more advanced than a Taluka or a Mofussil area. So this kind of information technology application should reach every nook and corner of the country for us to tap the potential of that area. Leadership skills and related traits. Again, I think the previous speaker has highlighted a lot on leadership skills. Leadership, according to me, is not a position, it's an attitude. And we'll have to develop those traits to develop that particular attitude so that when given that position, you don't mess with it or you don't know how to use it properly. Misuse is often made. So leader is not somebody who's there in a position. It is an attitude that you bear on your cognitive mindset. Of course, professionalism and work ethics. I just took the example of a hardworking student, culture of discipline, culture of time management, culture of preparedness, taking opportunity as it comes and learning all the way. That is the professionalism and work ethic, which is a competency actually. It's not just a behavior. It is considered as a personal competency. Now, this is part 4B. This is just an example that I have derived from industry. What they do in their assessment center is, suppose there is a job description, they map out whatever skill sets that is required or the types of competency that is required for that particular job. So if the diagram is clear, what does it say? It is defined as the process of identifying the key competencies which have the ability to do something efficiently and achieve the goals of the organization and make the organization successful. So here, if I have to apply the same thing, I would say I use competency mapping to list out the key competencies which is required for my stream so that my student or my child or my son, daughter, youth will be able to develop that and use that in their later work career or in their later life. So at the left-hand side of the on the left-hand side of the graph or the picture, you have the intellectual, motivational, emotional, and social competencies. Now, again, they go on listing what is intellectual, what is motivational, what is emotional, and what is social. On the right side of it is you have the methods of competency mapping that can be done through various assessment centers, or you have a technique called the critical incident technique. I'm sure if you Google them, you'll find out, and some of you could be even masters of this. Let me acknowledge that fact. Maybe we are reiterating the same things that you know, but it's always nice to reiterate something which you'll get in progress. You also have a questionnaire method asking people, experts, or also the employees what they possess and what they acquire, want to learn. And then, of course, the very famous psychometric test, which industrial psychologists have contributed to. So this is just a simple example that I have given to those of you who are not uh, familiar with that. But if in case you are familiar with it, it's very nice to know and hats off. Now, awareness of jobs and job description and titles. We somewhere concentrate a lot on the placement cell to do it. That happens in the fourth semester or on the higher areas. If in case the student is right at the onset, told in general, what is a job fit? What is, of course, there's a management stream that is included in some of our own semesters, but I'm not really aware if it addresses these matters in detail. Again, it is content imparting, examination passing, and then I got the 2 credits in that particular course. Have you internalized that philosophy of the subject, the organic way, the way the subject looks at it? I still have my own apprehensions. So information that must be a part of both generic and specific job descriptions enables the student to develop related competencies. Like the other day, I was talking to a student. He said, once I pass out from the mechanical engineering stream, I would like to serve in the government services as an administrator. So I have begun to read a lot of areas such as history, geography, nature, I mean the culture of the nation, etc. Because I need to know that if in case I want to be an IAS officer. I said, hats off to you, but then may I ask you a question? How did you realize this? He said, no, I went for an orientation program conducted by the college. I realized I was doing a lot in physics and chemistry and math and engineering, but then that is only just to pass my exams. Later on, when I face the interview, and I will have to apply whatever technical competencies that I have derived from my engineering stream, it will be a possibility only if I know the history, the geography, the culture of my nation. Now, that's a fantastic way of looking at a particular stream. So job fit, overall duties related to the job title, domain knowledge of are anyway imparting, application skills, both generic and specific, reporting lines for industry understanding, how the industry works, whether it is bureaucracy or whether it is an open system like a Google or whatever. The students should be aware right from their higher education areas that there is somebody that you will report to, that there is somebody that will be above you, that there is somebody that you will have to accept as a superior. And you know that professionalism and work ethic comes from here. Information technologies and programs require the Excel sheets, the MS tools, I mean, whatever the person has to know, including us as teachers, we will have to keep on developing it. Salary and benefits that is related to job title and the overall duties and where the person will have to grow. So that is a motivational factor indeed, but it also manages expectations. So you have students who pass out believing that I'll get a package. Somewhere I have a bit of an issue with the word package, because unless and until you begin your career somewhere, you cannot really look at a package only. So my request to all my participants here is, let us have a bit of this expectation management from our part imparted to our students. So somewhere they believe, you know, that as I finish my degree, I will be welcomed with a red carpet, and the placement cell has given me this fantastic company, this fantastic job. But then what I have to deliver there, who are all those people I have to report to? What is the work ethic that I will have to develop and exhibit? These are areas that I think we will have to give them a reality check. And of course, what are those continuous improvement areas? You know, it doesn't stop at this particular point. Our information related to where we can go. Like for example, when I was dealing with students of HR, there were many students who wanted to know how they could get into the organizational psychology or research into psychology, etc. So I had to do my own research if in case I had to guide somebody for continuous improvement. Of course, they do have mentors later, they do have superiors later, but this requesting ability, asking for information, seeking help, the method with which they do it actually can start from us. Now, here is a small example I have derived from a particular paper that I found written by researchers of the Industrial Engineering Management. And since our host is the Industrial Engineering Management branch, I thought let me use this as well. Competency and skilling for Industrial Engineering branch. Now, the first part the authors have included is a change in the pedagogy methods. That is, apart from existing predominant methodology, which is case study approach, a lecture method, etc., there are certain other areas that can be included, which is students' active learning systems. That is, make the students do research. Like, for example, they carry a cell phone to class. Indeed, it is bad to either access social media or any other, but let them use their technology to find information and to develop interest in that lecture. So students' active learning systems, studio teaching, database teaching, interactive computer assisted learning, problem-based learning, teaching with models such as conceptual, statistical, and mathematical can enable students to become competency-based learners. Now, instructional best practices that foster group work, decision-making, project-based learning, and appropriate technology aimed at motives, traits, self-concept. For example, most of our students don't know what a psychometric test is. This is one thing that can come in the second part, which is instructional best practices, to find out what their motives are, their traits. And the most important thing, a discovery of the self-concept, which is related to the knowledge and the skills. Once you have somebody with a very strong self-concept, I think teaching other concepts and teaching other traits, orienting them in that direction becomes a lot more easier. So I will leave this particular slide for you to read, and also you can explore the paper written by these three wonderful researchers, Competency-Based Training and Development for Industrial Engineering. Now, here are some insights based on certain other research papers. University teachers no longer are required to answer all the questions from the students. They only facilitate because information is available. They can possibly make our students better learners. Now, at the core of any competency-based strategy is a comprehensive competency framework. This is a library of behaviors. It's a library of skills that can be applied to different levels within a domain. So right from a fresher to a project manager to a project lead from this particular department, what are all those things that I can list out and maybe display it in my department? That can be done. One can develop competency framework either through in-house, that is our own resources within our own academic institutions, or you could choose an existing website or any other consultant or expert, because we are all learners in this journey. Now, a comprehensive competency library that has to be maintained. Once implemented, needs to be flexible. That is, every 3 years, it has to be refreshed, every 2 years maybe, because the challenges outside are not the 5-year plans that we are used to. The challenges outside are based on innovation and the market demands that are happening. So profiles of existing job titles, descriptions, etc., can be made in order to identify 6 to 8 competencies, and that can be updated or it can be edited every 2 years maybe, or every 3 years. So curriculum also can be accordingly designed, especially in institutions that are independent on their own, or some of the teachers and professors and academicians who believe in an independent methodology that could not disturb the apple cart of the main syllabus and curriculum. But as I said, every 10 minutes or 12 minutes in a class, if you can engage in these kind of activities, I think our motive is fulfilled. Now, this is something that was very interesting for me because it was an empirical learning. It's an inputs from a project leader of an IT industry. I have been requested to maintain the secrecy of the industry as well as the person for various reasons. But maybe some of the terms that I have used, some of you could connect to which company I'm talking about. Now, these are his words. He had sent me a mail on my request. I had sent him a questionnaire, and he says this, and I have retained that in reported speech only, so that we get a better understanding of what the industry expects from us. What we are taught in college and what we end up doing is very different. We are exposed only to domain knowledge and not necessarily updated. When I'm pitching a job, I don't think I have all the knowledge. Of course, that doesn't stop anybody from gaining knowledge, but this is his observation. Industry demands domain exposure for freshers with certain skill sets that helps develop further expertise and experience. Otherwise, what do we say? In this project, I had done this and therefore I have experience. He says that is debunked in the industry. He says the person should have developed it. The company gives you a bit of a time. It gives you a bit of a observational period for you to demonstrate that kind of behavior. So that should be harnessed within the college itself. So when interviewing a fresher, for example, for programming, we would want them to display some amount of competency for the roles they are applying, not just what C programming is or a Python is, etc. But when somebody tells you right on the spur of the moment, when he gives you a problem to be resolved, the person should be able to apply his knowledge there. Again, I'm saying that this is not done or whatever, but then this has to be widely done. It has to be widely accepted. So as he says, this is not necessarily a job experience. A job experience does not count if you do not, or if you do not exhibit your skill sets, or if it is not backed up with your project or your skill set experience. Now, the proof of time, that is what you have done, in case you have done or you have had a job experience, or you have studied in a particular college, or you have engaged yourself in another certificate program, the proof of the time and effort, it is not just, yes, I have a 2 years post-graduation in this, therefore give me a job. That is the proof of time. But what is the effort that you have invested in learning and upskilling? How have you demonstrated that is more important in the previous job experience. So to get students ready, teachers will need to include live examples from the industry. And this is from his own company, which he says, for example, on the subject of cyber security and data backup, which are the current offerings in the industry, if the faculty, this is just an example, if the faculty or academicians are updated every day as to what is happening, then the daily lectures can be a very interesting one, and the students' exposure to that particular domain could be interesting. So he says from his own company, our company offers a solution called cyber recovery, which is geared to protecting and isolating critical data from ransomware and other sophisticated threats. Now, data applications, big data analysis and analytics are, the applications are huge, humongous. So they are developing cyber recovery and cyber security systems. Now, unless the person is not prepared with the skill sets for dealing with analytics, how will he be able to contribute to his organization? Today, it is all about talent acquisition, which means I don't want a person with just a degree. I want a person who is a potential talent for me to come and start readily work on the fundamentals. There's no period for training and development and all of that now, especially in larger competitive industry. So students need to know what exactly is being offered in the industry. So for teachers to know the industry happenings, they will need to follow magazines and publications from the industry, particularly white papers which tech companies publish. And this is one of the portals that he has shared with us, along with subject domain journals. So what we do as academicians is we predominantly look into journals that are highly academic in their content, which of course is our duty. It's our primary general competency. But in case we want to develop a technical competency, we will have to look at more white papers. I'm not saying that we aren't, we definitely are, but then let's be updated on that. However, the issue with this approach is the number of new developments offerings in the market are just too many. So perhaps it may not be very practical for one academician or one faculty to be dealing with all of this. So what do? You collaborate. How do you do that? This is where alumni can pitch in and keep the teaching staff up to date, sync up calls once every few months to discuss what are the latest offerings in their company and their competitors. We have an alumni base, we have offices, very active alumni doing maybe social work or being in touch with their alma mater. But how more effectively can we use alumni is in constant touch. And today technology is enabling that. A Zoom interview in a classroom can be doing wonders actually. Now, when it comes to the skill aspects, these are some of his observations. By the time a student is in the second year or third year, he should be able to narrow down what domain of IT he wants to get into. Now, this is a specific example related to the IT field, okay? The computer sciences, information sciences and related areas. This can be done even for other branches and other domains, as I have told you earlier, with the help of the alumni support and also continuous learning and improvement. So by the time a student is in second or third year, he should be able to narrow it down. Now, avenues are many. And staff can assist in the charting a journey for the student to upskill himself in the domain of his choice. So look at the beauty of this project lead. He says sometimes, however, there are challenges here. Once a student chooses a domain, he may lose interest at a later stage, or he may just not be interested in pursuing that domain. He may be wanting to become maybe a social worker or an IAS officer or whatever. Or even the technology that we are discussing at that time may be obsolete or redundant by the time the student passes out. Also, the professor may not have the domain knowledge necessary to chart out the path for the student. In such situations, he must seek assistance from industry experts, placement and alumni cells can pitch in here. So we just don't have the industry institute interface, we have the alumni interface, we also have the consultants and the expert interface. And this can be done at a personal level, not just the institute doing it for you. It can also happen through your personal rapport with your past students, through your personal rapport with experts. That's why they say networking is very important for academicians and other professionals alike. When you network with the right kind of people, you become updated, you become thorough with whatever is happening in the industry. And this has come from the same student, which I have put it in bold. The quality of resilience, that is dealing with setbacks, adapting to change, is often neglected as a competency that needs to be highlighted always, right from semester 1 to semester last, that there are bound to be setbacks, that there are bound to be failures, that there are bound to be not meeting the expectations and the demands. But the quality of resilience, if it is put into the mind of the student that it is okay to have one or two, get up now and face it, perhaps he can go a long way in contributing. Another quality is ownership and accountability. Now, this particular trait is rare. This is what the person has mentioned to me, and I'm not sure how this can be inculcated. Now, if there is any contribution from the participant side, it's more welcome. How we can develop this concept of ownership and accountability for your decisions, for your work. We as a company have tried by providing incentives, training, and many other initiatives. However, it has not been totally successful. One of the main reasons could be because this trait is not developed at the growing years. And I strongly believe in what my project lead resource person has mentioned. And children and students are always used to being supervised, and obedience comes as a virtue. Whatever it may be, if you're obedient, you're a good child. If you're obedient, you're a good student. Even if you are projecting obedience and being dishonest about it. Somewhere, we will have to give up this trait of obedience. I'm not dismissing it, but overt obedience makes you a very dormant conformer. And change doesn't happen, innovation does not happen through conformness. It happens through people who challenge. Now, here is a soft skill that can come. How do you challenge? It's not by being loud and insulting the other person. Challenge with the right communication skill. Challenge with the right sense of empathy. Challenge with the right sense of written communication. Okay. So, how things are intertwined when you are looking at competency based nurturing, is what I'm trying to bring in at the fag end of my talk. So students, employees should be able to work without supervision once their deliverables are clarified to them. It looks utopian and idealistic indeed, because out of 10 students, maybe 8 are going to be this way, despite orientation, despite training. The other 2 may neglect that. Well, it's a Pareto's principle. You cannot have 100% legacy left behind all the time. There is going to be a gap of 20%. So therefore, let's look at predominantly making this as a characteristic building, that is accountability and ownership. Now, in a country like India, we are highly driven by herd mentality. That should stop. Whenever we see some success in a particular career, we tend to get attracted in masses towards it. Engineering is also one such profession. Maybe even other professions are there which we are not able to list. Acting, Bollywood. I mean, we don't really bother about those domains. Those are also careers. There are many, many famous personalities who've come out of great institutions of learning, who have gone on to be writers, script writers, actors. That is also a profession. They carry that professionalism and work ethic out there. So therefore, whenever we are driven by a particular career, it should be our choice. We should have an ownership of it, and we should also be accountable. A certain suggestion maybe for the elders given by our project lead here is allow students to be, do not monitor them always. They become parasitic, they become dependent on you. So once that is weaned off, perhaps they will be able to take more onus and accountability. Now, India produces about 15 lakh engineers and other professionals in this related stream per year, that is the MCAs, those related stream as well. And very few of them eventually get engineering related jobs. That's the sad part. According to an employability survey done in 2019, as late as 2019, 80% of engineers are not fit for jobs. Now, this is a wake-up call for all of us. We are in 2021. The pandemic has taught us a lot of things. We have begun to look within. We have begun to realize that if this continues, perhaps there may not be a good future for this country. And with a threat from all sides, especially the giant called China and the other neighbors that are fast catching up, looking at surveys such as this and feeling bad is not definitely a solution. But what is the action that we are going to take? Sooner the better. So as I would say, the competency-based education, that is the CBE, which is already introduced in the primary and the middle school areas, the school education syllabus. It is very heartening to know that even life skills starts from standard 8, 9th, and 10th. I have engaged sessions and they are wonderful. The boards and the CBSE stream has done a fantastic job in developing content and making teacher resources available across the country. The outcome-based education and other cognitive areas that we are looking at in higher education is very welcome, but with a little bit of tweaking when it comes to the competency mapping and competency-based education, perhaps our preparedness is taking the first step forward. So this is another reference I have drawn from Santosh Mehrotra, Ankita Gandhi, Bimal K. Sahu, who are scientists, researchers at the Institute of Applied Manpower Research Planning Commission, Government of India. They say, the window of opportunity called the demographic dividend is available to India only till 2040. So our population, by the time we harness them to manpower and make them resources and assets, we have very little time. And it seems 2040 is so far away, but then it is just 2 decades. And by then we will have fresher population. So realizing the demographic dividend brings to the fore the very serious challenge of skilling our labor force. Population is a threat to our country, but if in case we are able to skill them at every level, then we could make them into an advantage asset. But before devising the skill development strategy for these coming years, a greater importance is to estimate the magnitude of the challenge and to assess the skill gap. How are we going to bridge that gap? How are we going to fill those gaps? No matter which scenario one ends up believing, the challenge of skill development, both in quantitative and qualitative terms, is enormous and requires a careful policy stance. Now, we as academicians, as seniors, as citizens of this country, if we can make up our minds to take up one small step in being the cog in the wheel of skilling by making our own classes interesting, by making our own professions a little more upscaled, and also, looking at it through a different spectrum and lens, I think somewhere every drop that makes a larger ocean, that cliched, often quoted saying could be a reality. Now, this has come in the year, this particular observation has come in the year 2022 by these experts. You can Google them. They are contributing very highly when it comes to the analytics of these skill gaps. I think we can draw a lot of inspiration from such papers. So this kind of brings me to the end of my discussion about whatever I wanted to share with you. And I hope it was interesting, and I'm open for queries. And
may I request the participants to post the queries on the chat box.
And
there is a question on what is social competency, needs more explanation. So I think that can be taken as a question as of now, madam.
Yes, sir. Social competency is your social skill sets. Some people are socially shy. Society demands a particular skill set to maintain some kind of a balance and equilibrium. So in our race to make our students academic experts, we have neglected social concerns. Work-life balance, for that matter, maintaining good relationships, mutual respect for one another, respecting religions across the streams of society, respecting people who are from, not very privileged backgrounds, empathizing with them. These are all social competencies on a general level. The list could go on. So, but generally, this is what. Yes, of course, CBS CBCS is definitely a very welcome change, ma'am. And I think the new economic policy also is encouraging that. So you can have a crafts along with, say, mechanical engineering. You can have maybe architecture studied with some other branch of another field like literature, performing arts, etc., which will make us complete individuals. Otherwise, we have people who are so interested only in the engineering, they may not even know how to run a home. They may not even know how to manage a spouse. These are all social skills that we were talking about. Thank you for your feedback, Dr. Arun Kumar. I hope we can definitely collaborate with the government, with the country, with the policy in making small changes within our own, environment of the classroom. Any other questions, Dr. Rajesh, if I can take
participants, may I know any questions? There is a question, madam. There is a question on how do we synchronize heavy academic syllabus with industry-based teaching?
Yes. Now, I mentioned that we are a part of a system. Like, for example, we are at our own institution, the MSRIT, like other engineering colleges, we are affiliated to certain government-run authorities, and then there is a certain a pressure on us to deliver that as well. Now, I would believe when you're engaging the class, that 10 minutes once a week or twice a week for your particular subject that you're dealing with actually can go in a long way in making that kind of difference. You can also share a lot of resources with your students and ask them to come prepared for that 10-minute session later on. It could be a research paper, it could be a journal article, it could be maybe even a television program that we all see related to a particular branch or related to a particular stream. For example, I'll give you my own example. When I was looking at communication skills, now it's a very simple concept when compared to maybe a design or a programming and other areas. But then there was this interesting documentary I found about a student who really didn't know any, about a child, sorry, who didn't know any kind of English as in formal training. But then he was taking these people, the tourists and the foreigners, across the Ajanta and Ellora complex, talking in fantastic French, Russian, and English, because he noticed that the predominant tourists that came there were these people from these countries or those that understood these languages. So what he did was he kept on listening to somebody who was giving that lecture earlier, and over a period of 1 year or 2 years, he learned everything about that Ajanta and Ellora complex, Ajanta predominantly. I told my students, look, what listening can do to you, what observation can do to you, you know. So this is what I feel even in your own domain, despite the challenges, is somewhere you can bring in some kind of industry practices. I think, sir, I'm sorry, I don't know if it's a sir or a ma'am who has asked this question, but your reading, your awareness, your observation, your cognitive traits help you a lot. And your preparation for the class helps you a lot. And we always talk about IQ and EQ nowadays, which is your intelligence quotient and your emotional quotient. But there's something else called passion that drives you. You know, I can bring in the example of Dr. Acharya Vinoba Bhave. When he went to a certain school, there was no sweeper. We all read that as a simple primary school lesson. But when there was nobody and he found the place very dirty, he picked up a broom and he started sweeping. And what was the lesson he delivered to the students that day? He said, whatever job you may be doing, see that you're the best there. Okay, so these are all cliched examples, but then once you internalize them, yes, Vinuta R. Bhatta, when students are assessed on rote learning, ma'am, that is ROTE, not WROTE, I'm sorry. It is rote learning, skill development is considered often by students as LEMP. I totally agree with you, ma'am, and I definitely empathize with you. And this is where I'm looking at curriculum, pedagogical change. Curriculum, yes, that's not certainly 100% in our hands, but the way you deliver the subject, being within the system, you know. So what if students don't take it as important? Somewhere later they will realize. In a class of 70, I can guarantee you 40 of them take it. You dangle marks, they will definitely do it. I have no doubt about that. But you dangle a dream, you dangle an inspiration, you dangle a motivation, then I suppose it could help. Yes, I'm sorry, there's somebody who's a soft skills trainer. I'm not taking a single class throughout this year because mainstream subjects are most important. Mainstream subjects, less stream subjects, I don't know why we are differentiating. In fact, if you look at the national education policy, every language is important, every subject is important, everything that gives you an opportunity to learn is on a common platform. I think this is the mindset we have to get out of. As youngsters, if you are in your 30s and 40s, please be militant about it. There is a differentiation in the engineering streams itself. Computer science is definitely better than maybe XYZ, and an XYZ is pitched against something else. And the way even some of the students and the teachers look at it is also very sad. You need a collaborative coming together, synergy of subjects to make the society a better place. See, when everybody is chasing a herd mentality and taking up engineering, though they do not have an aptitude for it, we are not producing world-class sociologists. We are not producing world-class political thinkers. And we are happy producing normal, average computer scientists, computer science students. That is also wrong. If the person has an aptitude for it, definitely he has to go into that field. So therefore, my teacher community, particularly who are there as participants here, whatever the others may tell you, do not give up on what you believe you are doing, because that will make a difference. Remember, I told you about the invisible and the visible features. Currently, it may be invisible, but once the students start working outside, it becomes visible. I get in touch with so many students, they don't really remember the lessons I taught them. They remember the examples that I have quoted. They remember the way that I have dealt with them. I won't say I'm 100% success. I have made my mistakes. I have corrected myself. But then the passion that drives you is to be the best wherever you are. Understanding their competency mapping, for which Dr. Seema, I'll type it out for you. Dr. Seema Sanghi, the name of the book is A Handbook on Competency Mapping. Seema Sanghi is a popular organizational behavior expert and an organizational psychologist. So she has written wonderful papers. She has a very small book called the Handbook of Competency Mapping. So suppose you're dealing with commerce students, just list out those competencies, general, specific. You don't have to go into the main detail, which anyway industry does, which experts do. But if the students are inclined towards their competencies right at the beginning, say for accounting field, these are all 1, 2, 3, 4, which is general, 1, 2, 3, 4, which are specific. So, you know, they develop their understanding and they develop their comprehensibility through those lists. And of course, even the students are smart enough now. Once you give them a window, they open the doors, you know. I'm sorry, I didn't get what it means. Humanities and social sciences flavor. Sir, the phrase seems a little incomplete. Can you address what you were wanting to say related to humanities and social sciences? If you could be a little more specific. Well, sir, this is Dr. C.V. Mohan. Thank you so much, sir. Very, very relevant question. We are still job driven. India being a predominantly middle class or maybe lower middle class developing economy. Second part, we are not patient enough for our careers to take off because our parents' expectations are also very high. So you find a person who's from biotechnology going into coding and programming and fizzling out maybe after 5 years or 6 years. So the mindset should change. I think along with counseling our teachers, if in case these sessions of counseling can be held for parents, that it's okay. I know jobs drive families. Money is important for all of us. But if with a little more patience, if the student is able to explore what he studied for, what he's going to do with history, I think we can make a beginning. I remember I was talking to Guru Raj Deshpande sir in Hubli. He happens to be the brother-in-law of Sudha Murthy, the celebrated Narayan Murthy and Sudha Murthy couple. He said somehow Indians, we have not come out of the 80s and the 90s mindset. You know, those days when I used to wait for a bus, there was one bus that took me to say a Baswangudi. These are from his words. I used to wait for one bus from Baswangudi to go to Baswangudi, which is an area in Bangalore, from a particular area where he used to stay. And after that bus left, it was another 20 minutes that the next bus came. So what would we do? We all would rush into that bus. and hang on even on the steps and this and that, because we would be wasting 20 minutes. But today, sadly, there are 5 buses within a span of 10 minutes or 5 minutes that go there. But we have lost the patience of waiting for that 10 minutes also, because that mindset has continued. So though we have resources today, though there is something which is, if not plentiful, but sufficient enough, we have that rush mentality. We have that impatience, because that's a national mindset. It is ingrained in us. I'm so happy that there is someone who is appreciating my session. Thank you, ma'am. Words of encouragement go a long way, Dr. Meenakshi.
Okay, madam, I think we are done with all the questions. Thanks for responding to the questions posted by our participants.
Thank you, sir.
I hope that there are no more questions coming from the participant side. So with this, I thank you very much. Thanks a lot, madam, for giving an elaborate and in-depth insight into nurturing competency-based talent. I hope all our participants have enriched their knowledge on how to nurture the talent amongst the learners.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for attending this interesting session on my side.
Thank you, Dr. Rajesh and the Department of Industrial Engineering Management. First of all, taking the pains. I'm witness to all the pain that you have taken to bring this FDP to a fruition. And this was my few cents into the contribution. I am ever indebted for the opportunity to share whatever I have as knowledge. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks for all the comments, man. Thank you. Thank you.